Yo, what is going on, everyone? I'm back with another review video. It is going to be on my Pulsar pads, the ES1 and ES2. Both absolutely insane level of quality and performance just right off the bat. And then the other thing too is, at least for me personally, these two are the most anticipated pads so far. I haven't been really excited for a pad release since the Saturn and Venus Pro. And obviously, just talking about the overall quality for this pad in particular also applies to the ES2 that I'm also going to be bringing out just a little bit later. So talking about the stitched edging, it is absolutely perfect. This is like the exact level of quality that I always look for. It's better than Artisan in my opinion. It is lower than the surface itself. It is so tightly weaved and very thin. So even though pressing on it, you can feel it, it is impossible to feel it in game. And it is incredible to see this level of quality. I didn't think it could really get any better than Artisan and what Lethal Gaming Gear were able to do with their Saturn and Venus Pro. But this kind of stitching is exactly what I want to see from companies. Absolutely beautiful. Another thing too is obviously going to be their Alpha Cell base, the stickiest thing known to man. Even touching it feels very sticky. It is ridiculously impressive. It sticks firmly to your desk, and I don't see this thing ever moving anywhere. It is almost impossible for me to even fathom that kind of thought. The one really interesting thing is it feels like a band-aid almost. I think Unplugged really talked about that really well. If you lay it to where there's any sort of bubbling, it'll just like hold the bubble. It is really difficult for me to like put this into play. You can see that it like slightly moves and then it just stays there. So you really want to be careful on how you lay it. Normally you can just like plop it on your desk, but I like to do from left to right and then just kind of like press onto the pad and then just make sure that there's no bubbling anywhere on the pad, because that will affect how you play. But other than that small weird thing where it feels like that, if you can get it to lay perfectly flat, which you should be able to if you just do left to right or right to left, it really doesn't matter which way you do it. All that matters is you slowly apply it to your desk, because it does feel like a band-aid. Talking about the design, the really sad thing is all of this beautiful printing that Pulsar put on the pad really does affect the glide. Although I have never once gone all the way up here on my pad or all the way on the right like this. So I feel like no matter what, you're going to be fine. I do just wish that for the level of quality that everything else was, I do wish that they did print these two things on the left hand and right hand side. Now, finally talking about the surface itself, it is really good and really bad at the same time, at least for the ES1. The ES2 is perfect. In terms of the ES1, the surface really does depend on mouse gates is what I've learned, and there's a slight break-in period as well. If I use mouse feet like the Starlight 12, it feels perfectly fine. Although if I use larger feet like on the XM2WE, it does feel much slower, which obviously that just comes from having bigger feet. Although I don't like pads that really are mouse feet dependent. I think that really hinders my recommendation. The other thing too is if you press into the pad whatsoever, if there is any small amount of pressure, I've felt like tugging. It feels kind of like it's moving like this, or it's just like jittering, which is really irritating. The one thing that I care about most other than initial friction is going to be the consistency of the dynamic friction. If there's any sort of give while moving your mouse like this, it just really hinders my opinion of the pad overall. If you do use anything like a Starlight or really any mouse with a 4 feet mouse design and you don't apply a whole lot of pressure, then the pad feels incredible. Really low initial friction, pretty good dynamic friction. Even with no pressure added, I do feel like it is slightly slow. I feel like this pad, at least surface wise, is very Venus Pro like. So any hindrance that you felt on the Venus Pro, I do feel like you're going to also feel with the ES1. And I did talk about it in my Venus Pro review, which is why I prefer the Saturn Pro to the Venus Pro, which is also probably why I prefer the ES2 to the ES1. But in a perfect world, the initial friction is incredibly light. The stopping power is definitely not as good as the ES2, which is probably because it's a hybrid pad. It's not really a control pad. So I do understand why there's a lot less stopping power on this pad than there is on the other one. And right before I bring out the ES2, I did actually forget to talk about the softness and the thickness of the pads itself. It is very soft. I would say it's really close to what LGG has put out with their Pro pads, and as well as Artisan Soft. The other thing too is, just like with Lethal Gaming Gear's Pro pads, it is only 3 millimeters. So if you apply a lot of pressure, like if you push down a lot with your mouse, you're gonna bottom out on your desk really fast. I feel like for soft pads like this, 3.5 millimeters is really good because it does let you accommodate for people that do press into their pad. You do give them a little bit more room to still have a little bit of pad. And then the other thing too is I just like overall comfort, which is why I prefer 4 millimeter and X Soft. Now talking about my favorite pad right now, it hits all of my boxes except that it's 490 by 420 and not my favorite 500 by 500 size. But other than that, in terms of overall quality and performance, this is my favorite pad right now, and I will talk about why. First off, inertial friction and dynamic friction actually feel faster on the control variant, the ES2, than it does on the ES1, which is definitely something that I found very strange. I didn't think that this pad would be so silky smooth, and honestly, fairly fast for what is offered. And I have seen a few people say that they are kind of like confused as to why it's like misleading marketing, which I feel like on their test for their website, they do everything correctly. It's just in play, I feel like the ES2 is faster than the ES1. The other thing too is this is the closest thing you could possibly think of to a Saturn Pro, except this is faster than a Saturn Pro, but both quality wise is perfect. The biggest difference to the Saturn Pro is it's not as heavy stopping power wise. There's not as much stopping power, but the initial friction and dynamic is so much smoother and so much lighter, which is really important to me. For some reason, I do prefer control pads for almost any type of game. So unless you're like that, I don't want to recommend this for Apex or for Overwatch. But if you do prefer control pads just overall, this is an insanely great recommendation. I could not recommend this pad more. The Saturn Pro and now the ES2 are my two favorite pads right now. I'm so speechless at how much I love this pad. The other thing too is, unlike the ES1, all of this is all printed into the pad. So anywhere, it doesn't matter. Everywhere on this pad is perfectly smooth everywhere you go. Again, kind of weird they didn't do that with the ES1. They only did it with this one, but honestly, hey, that just makes this pad much more favorable to me personally. But yeah, that pretty much is all for my review. This is my favorite pad. This is just a beautiful pad. It looks great, it feels great, it performs wonderful. I could not ask for anything more with Pulsar, honestly. In terms of quality, they're showing time and time again that they're doing incredible feats for the community itself. But my next review will probably be on the Atlantis Mini. Probably the best small mouse, especially for claw, out right now. Honestly, I love this mouse and this company. They're doing feats as well. But yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next review. Peace.